Hey Apex Agents, Mobius Y here with another video for Mass Effect Andromeda multiplayer. So this video is technically a day late, but having a full-time job kind of has that effect on my hobbies, so it is what it is. Yesterday on May 10th, the patch 1.06 dropped for Mass Effect Andromeda. There was lots of bug fixes and whatnot for single player, but there was also some combat balance and multiplayer updates that were done with this patch. And this patch was kind of a big deal for a lot of people who have been frustrated with the overall balance at the higher difficulties in multiplayer, as well as some major problems with the multiplayer game mode. So this is directly off of the BioWare blog, and we're going to go through this as quickly as possible, so I'm really not going to offer my own opinions very much. Instead, I will try to stick to explaining what certain things mean if they seem a little bit confusing. So directly from the BioWare blog, we have received a lot of community feedback about balance issues in multiplayer. We have improved the overall experience based on that feedback and our own testing. Powers and weapons were underperforming at higher difficulties, particularly power combos and assault rifles. As a result, players relied heavily on the Vanquisher sniper rifle and melee-focused classes, which is 100% true. We found current damage levels significantly slowed the pace of games on gold and silver difficulties. To fix this, we started to overhaul the balance in multiplayer. Today's changes are the first step in that process. For general patch 1.06 notes, blah, 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 you can check out the other patch notes there. I'll actually put a link to this webpage in the description below if you want to go over these yourself, and also check out the general patch notes or examine them in other languages. So, starting off with powers, we determined that the base damage of powers were too low, which caused them to be underpowered in the late stages. We've now increased the base damage of powers and improved some of the bonuses granted by additional skill points. We've also improved damage from passive skill trees. Combo detonations on gold and silver difficulties also received a buff because they inflicted less damage than intended. So this is basically confirming that the combo detonations were not inflicting as much damage as the developers expected. Weapons. Mass Effect multiplayer is more fun when it's fast-paced, but low weapon damage limited that pace on gold and silver difficulties. There was also a noticeable imbalance between weapon classes, particularly for shotguns and assault rifles. 100% true. We've boosted the base damage for several underperforming assault rifles, pistols, and shotguns to make them more effective. In particular, we wanted shotguns to become better skirmish weapons, so we boosted their damage and accuracy outside of cover while reducing the extra accuracy bonus when firing from cover. This basically means that when you're running around hip firing with your shotgun, it will be slightly more accurate than previously, and when you're shooting it from cover, it will be a little bit less accurate than previously. But shooting from cover will still always result in a more accurate shot than running around hip firing. Finally, we reduced the damage of the Vanquisher sniper rifle to make it comparable with other weapons. Its overwhelming damage far outclassed other weapons and made this particular sniper rifle a must-have. We've now evened the playing field so players feel more comfortable bringing something besides the Vanquisher to a gold-level game. We'll continue to consider potential adjustments for some weapons. This is actually pretty nice because running into lobbies where it was simply Firebase 0 with Vanquishers got a little old, so this encourages people to try other things. Enemy factions. We've also changed how difficult some enemy factions are to fight. Due to their individual survivability, the Ket were the most difficult faction. To combat this, we reduced their health and defenses. We also lessened the chance the Fiend will sync attack on silver and gold difficulties. We are investigating latency issues that cause the Fiend to appear like it teleports when it jumps. We wanted to make the outlaws more challenging, so we improved the ability of sharpshooters and hydras to push players into cover. We also made the berserker easier to fight from cover, and the hydra is now stronger and more dangerous. We left the remnant untouched and continue to monitor their performance. These changes apply to both single player, which is labeled as SP, and multiplayer, which is labeled as MP, unless otherwise specified. Now, changes to the player itself. Fixed a bug that made silver and gold difficulties use normal stats for shield gate and health gate. Fixed a bug that made silver and gold difficulties use normal stats for damage reduction due to armor. Enemy armor now reduces 15 damage per hit on silver and 20 damage per hit on gold to a minimum of 10 damage per hit. What this means is that how armor actually works compared to normal health or shields is that armor has a flat numerical value that reduces the damage it takes from each shot of a weapon when it is shot at by it. So on silver, that damage reduction is exactly 15 points, and on gold, it's exactly 20 points. And what it means by to a minimum of 10 damage per hit is that if you're shooting a weapon, like a rapid-fire weapon, that only does, say, 6 damage per bullet hit, the damage reduction of the armor, well, I guess that might be too low of a value. Maybe not 6. Maybe more like, let's say, 12 damage per hit. If you're on silver, the 15 damage reduction and 20 points of damage reduction from armor would technically reduce it so that you're doing no damage with your gun, but that gun will still do a minimum of 10 damage per bullet hit. So that's basically what that means, is you're always going to do some kind of damage by shooting at armor, no matter how weak the gun is. Powers, all damage powers, multiplayer, raw damage upgrades increased by a cumulative 25 to 35% per power. All offensive passive lines. This is multiplayer only. Power damage upgrades increased by a cumulative 20% per line. This means that the full passive line increases the power damage by an additional 20%. Power combos, multiplayer only. Fixed an issue that caused combos in gold and silver difficulties to inflict incorrect base damage. Increased base combo damage by approximately 60% in bronze, 140% in silver, and 200% in gold. Increased the value of combo damage upgrades in all passives from plus 30% to plus 50%. So now it's a significant bonus. Combat powers. Barricade got a buff, increased base duration from 12 seconds to 13 seconds, decreased rank 4 duration bonus from 40% to 35%, although the end duration is still greater than before. Increased rank 5 buff from 20% to 30% power damage bonus. Flak cannon got some buffs as well, increased base primary damage from 180 to 250, increased base power cell count from 2 to 4. Tech powers, assault turret, which was borderline useless, increased the rank 5 flamethrowers damage per second from 45 to 150, so that's over 3 times the damage per second, and the burn damage over time increased from 22 to 35 damage per second. So really, really good flamethrower buffs. For the assault turret, increased the rank 2 health upgrade from plus 30 to plus 50%, and the rank 4 health upgrade from plus 50% to plus 75%. So major health bonuses if you decide to make your assault turret more tanky. The power's cooldown now triggers when the turret spawns instead of when it is destroyed. Now, this is actually a good thing because the base cooldown when you use the turret is now 30 seconds, but it can be reduced to 10 seconds with the rank 4 cooldown upgrade. So this means that as soon as you throw your turret, it won't sit there until it is either destroyed by enemies' fire or destroyed by yourself when you wish to detonate it. So now the power's cooldown triggers immediately when you throw the turret out, and it can be greatly reduced. Increased base bullet damage from 20 to 36, almost double for multiplayer, and from 20 to 23 for single player. Fixed a bug causing the rank 6 cryo ammo to inflict no damage. That was a multiplayer fix. Incinerate. The base damage was increased from 120 to 350, almost approximately 3 times the base damage. Decreased the damage over time from 50 to 45 damage per second. So that's nothing major considering the initial hit damage is significantly higher now. Overload, multiplayer only again, increased base uncharged damage from 150 to 200 and charged damage from 200 to 300. Flamethrower increased base damage from 220 to 240 per second for multiplayer and from 220 to 225 damage per second for single player. Cryo Beam, multiplayer, increased base damage per second from 135 to 150. Energy Drain, similar story, increased base damage from 160 to 175. So slight buffs to all 3 of those tech powers, all 4 of them I should say, Overload, Flamethrower, Cryo Beam, and Energy Drain. Shield Boost, the base radius for affecting your allies and regenerating their shields with a shield boost. The radius was increased from 6 meters to 8 meters, that's the base radius. And in multiplayer, increased support score generated by successfully giving another player shields from 10 to 20. So you won't look like you're dead weight anymore on the scoreboard if you're sitting around shield boosting people while still killing enemies. Invasion, improved rank 4 infection radius and rank 5 spread radius. Now Remnant VI was another pet kind of power like Assault Turret that was borderline useless, but now it's gotten some major buffs. Increased base health from 500 to 800, so more than 50%. Increased rank 2 health upgrade from 15% to 65%, so over 4 times the bonus. Improved rank 4 health regeneration rate and delay. Increased rank 5 close combat health upgrade from 120% to 200%, so almost twice as much, not quite. That's about a 40% bonus, or sorry, more like about a 60% bonus. Increased the rank 6 missile damage from 90 to 450. That's approximately 5 times greater damage. Decreased the rank 6 missiles cooldown from 10 seconds to 5 seconds. So now it's not only doing way more damage per hit, but it's also shooting more frequently. And in multiplayer, increased base beam damage from 70 to 100 damage per second. An extra roughly 50%, a little less than that. Fixed an issue where the VI would occasionally get stuck, and the VI will now teleport to the player if its path is too complex. So it simply won't get stuck on the map anymore and do nothing. Biotic powers. Pull. Increased rank 5's crush and grip damage over time from 35 to 60. Throw. Increased base damage from 225 to 240. Slight buff there. Shockwave also received a slight buff. Increased base damage from 225 to 245 for multiplayer. And from 225 to 260 for single player. Singularity's base cooldown was decreased from 24 seconds to 20 seconds, so you can use it more frequently. And the recharge rate bonus was increased from 25% to plus 40%. So you can get Singularity usage much more quickly now. Backlash. These are all multiplayer changes. Increased base Aegis health from 350 to 400, so the shield now has more health. Increased base reflection damage bonus from 180% to 200%, so approximately double damage. And increased rank 4 and rank 5 bonuses. Charge, the base damage was increased to 25 points to 275 from 250. Nova, the base damage was increased 20 points for multiplayer and 50 points for single player. Now, Annihilation is one of the few powers that got some slight nerfs. The base cooldown penalty was increased from 60% to 75%. What this means is when you have Annihilation Field active, there was a cooldown penalty to any other power that you would use that had a cooldown. So, for example, the Asari Adept had Throw and Lance. If you had Annihilation Field active, their cooldowns were hit by another 60%. Now that's been increased to 75%, so you will be able to use the other powers less often. That makes the rank 4, I believe it is, or rank 5 evolution that reduces this cooldown penalty much more appealing. Decreased the rank 4 radius bonus from 50% to 35%. Damage and bonuses from different users will now stack on the same target. So essentially this means that if you have two people on the same enemies, like say a Hydra mech, two different people using an Annihilation Field, both with a debuffing effect on their Annihilation Field, it will stack on the Hydra now. Lance, slightly improved aim assist at longer ranges. This is good for us console plebes. Lance can be a little bit difficult to land for some people, especially at mid to long ranges. Passive powers, barrier, multiplayer. The barrier drain, shield regeneration value from melee attacks decreased from 20% to 15%. So you'll get less shields back if you have this evolution in your barrier passive and you're punching things. So it makes you a little less impervious to damage, more or less. Biotic Link can now only apply its effect once every 5 seconds, and the Saving Barrier ability, which was ridiculously good. The cooldown on the automatic shield regeneration increased from 10 seconds to 15 seconds, so you're no longer borderline invincible when you're playing a human Vanguard. You do have to be a little bit more careful now, but these are still really strong capabilities. 15% of your shields back when you hit something with a melee, and still every 15 seconds whenever you get low health, your barrier fully recharges back to 100%. Biotic Ascension, multiplayer changes again, improved the bonuses for rank 6 evolutions, and then there's some changes to character stats. The Asari Adept had its base shields decreased from 250 to 200, and the Krogan Vanguard had its base shields decreased from 180 to 150. So that makes them slightly less tanky without any add-ons from their powers. Now here's the real meat and potatoes. Here's the changes to weapons. Now the thing about BioWare's balance changes to weapons is they always display a number and then a hyphen and then a second number when they talk about changing values. For example, the Avenger increased damage from 3547 to 3950. What these are is the numbers on the left of the hyphen indicates that weapon at grade 1. So a freshly unlocked version of that weapon. And the numbers on the right of the hyphen represent the value of that weapon at grade 10. So this basically means that at grade 1, the Avenger used to do 35 damage per bullet. Now it does 39. Now at grade 10, the Avenger used to do 47 damage per bullet. Now it does 50. So that's basically what that means. Essentially, it gives you the damage values of the weapon at grade 1 and at grade 10. The Matic, the damage was increased almost an additional 100% from 5063 to 9113. The magazine size was also increased 4 shots from 16 to 20. The Zalkin had its damage increased from 6076 to 7999. That's a pretty big bonus. Here's a huge one. The N7 Valkyrie increased damage from 8699 to 164,190. That's almost double the damage per bullet now in the Valkyrie. Also, the magazine size was increased from 16 to 20, so you have, instead of just 8 2-shot bursts, you now have 10. Increased total spare ammo from 128 to 160 to 140, 175. So more more spare ammo for the N7 Valkyrie. The Soned machine gun increased damage from 5159 to 7081. Improved rate of fire charge time from 1 second to 5 seconds. 0.5 seconds. The Soned did have a kind of ramp up thing where it didn't actually reach its full rate of fire for a full second. They cut that in half now. Improved accuracy when firing from the hip or firing blindly over barriers, so you land your shots better when you're hip firing or shooting over cover. Maximum accuracy while aiming down sights was slightly decreased. The accuracy penalty for firing was reduced. So basically what this means is sustained fire, it will now not suffer such an accuracy loss, but the maximum accuracy when you're aiming down sights was slightly decreased. The PAW increased damage from 3540 to 5867. The Halberd also had a pretty big damage increase from 9113 to 150,180. So it's definitely pretty strong now compared to previously. We'll see how that handles in future weapon tests. Pistols had some changes. Carnifex. This used to be like the worst gun in the game. It had the lowest DPS in the game. It was absolute garbage. Increased damage from 175 220 to 255 321. So a pretty big damage bonus there. Desperately needed for the Carnifex. The Hornet increased damage from 4655 to 101 121. Pretty much another double damage bonus up there. The Sidewinder increased damage from 150 180 to 167 200. The Hurricane amazingly got a buff, increased damage from 4957 to 6575, and the Eagle got a nice buff, increased damage from 6980 to 96 111, and the accuracy was also improved. That'll be nice to see. I can't wait to get an Eagle for myself. The Roserad increased damage from 4856 to 7384, increased rate of fire from 420 to 525 to 490 613. So big rate of fire bonuses there. Also, the rate of fire charge time was reduced from 2 seconds to 1 second. Again, the Roserad had a bit of a ramp-up time where you had to hold the trigger down for 2 seconds to reach the maximum rate of fire. Now you only have to do it for 1 second. Also, the overall accuracy was improved. The Ushior pistol, this one got a pretty big buff. Increased damage from 463 535 to 775 896. So that's a good roughly 70-80% damage bonus per shot. And the magazine size was increased from 1 shot to 2. So now you've basically got a 2-shot pocket sniper with the Ushior pistol. Increased total ammo from 80-23 to 20-25. Also, the weight was reduced from 0.25, 0.13 to 0.2 and 0.1. So it won't affect your cooldowns as much. It'll be a really good backup weapon. The Charger, the accuracy was slightly reduced. Not a big deal. It's still a pretty gold viable weapon. You simply just got to get closer to your targets to make sure you're landing your hits. Shotguns, much needed shotgun buffs. Katana increased damage per pellet from 4661 to 6485. Now what this means, increased damage per pellet. Most shotguns don't shoot a single slug or a single round like most other guns. They shoot multiple pellets. So increasing the damage per pellet by even just a little bit can potentially increase the damage per shot by a crap load because it's multiple pellets per shot. So a nice buff needed on the Katana there. The Piranha amazingly also got a buff, although a very slight one. Damage per pellet increased from 5462 to 5968. The Disciple increased damage per pellet from 6076 to 7999. The Ruzad increased damage per pellet from 98 123 to 171 215. Almost another double damage bonus. Pretty close, not quite though. The Crusader increased damage from 382 442 to 699 808. Bullet trails added to the slug, so you can more easily see where you're hitting. Pretty nice buff to the Crusader there. The Hesh amazingly got a buff. This used to have the second highest DPS in the game. Increased damage per pellet from 55.66 to 66.79. So now a grade 1 hash does as much damage as a grade 10 hash would do before this patch. The scatter shot, much needed buffs here. Increased damage per pellet from 46.55 to 66.79. The Dan increased damage from 595.688 to 850.983. Increased magazine size from 2 to 3, so it's now a 3-shot shotgun. Increased total spare ammo from 2025 to 2126, and it deals extra weak point damage. The Venom, fan favorite from Mass Effect 3, increased damage from 290.348 to 352.422, so a pretty nice buff there. The initial round will now explode on contact with a target, and the fragments will travel faster and longer before they explode. So making the Venom's little kind of mini frag grenades much more viable there, less likely to just kind of bounce all over the place or immediately explode on the first target you hit. Sniper rifles, the Vanquisher, the damage was reduced from 675.810 to 600.720, so it's still pretty significant for a 4-shot sniper rifle. The Shadow, damage increased from 38.46 to 85.102. That's a pretty massive buff right there, over double the damage across all grades. Increased damage as the Shadow gets closer to overheating. Weapon will overheat faster. Remember that the Shadow is actually a kind of sustained fire sniper rifle. And it is a beam weapon, so it will do a lot more DPS now. It will also overheat faster. The Valiant increased damage from 463.535 to 550.636. Total spare ammo increased from 35.44 to 45.56. Excuse me. The Naladin increased damage from 496.574 to 650.752. Enemies: the Ket Wraith reduced health by 20%. The Ket Chosen reduced health by 5%. The Anointed reduced shields by 47%, which is great. The Destined reduced shields by 67%, also great. So now they're not going to be as ridiculously tanky as they have been. The Fiend decreased the chance that a Fiend initiates a sync attack on hardcore and insanity difficulties in single player and silver and gold difficulties in multiplayer. This means it simply won't do it as often, which also translates to it's less likely to just teleport sync kill you, or what's the phrase that people have been using? Magnet mouth, I suppose, would be the term. So you still kind of want to stay away from a Fiend because the chance of being sync killed by it is still there, so you still want to maintain your distance, but the chance of it being within close proximity but not within sync kill proximity and still having you teleport into its mouth where it sinks you is reduced because of this. The Ascendant, the Cobra RPG, can now damage the Ascendant after its orb is destroyed. On normal or bronze difficulty, the Cobra RPG can kill the Ascendant in one shot. Increased effectiveness of powers and weapons that lack extra weak point damage against the orb, so the orb should be easier to kill now. Outlaws, there were some buffs to Outlaws here. The Angaran Saboteur increased armor by 33%. The Turian Anarchist increased armor by 33%, increased weapon damage by 20%. The Solarian Agent increased armor by 33%, now fires more frequently. The Asari Pariah increased armor by 33%, increased weapon damage by 20%. The Sharpshooter increased shields by 60%, increased frequency of firing at targets in cover, decreased aiming time against out-of-cover targets at higher difficulties. This means that it will actually lock onto you more quickly. Decreased sniper rifle damage by 18%, so it won't hit as hard now, which is kind of nice. And in single player, fixed a bug that caused the Rokar Sharpshooters to deal 75% more sniper rifle damage than intended. Don't know why I bothered reading that, it's a single player thing only. The Krogan Berserker, the armor was actually reduced by 20%, which is great because these things were tougher than Hydras, it seemed. The Hydra increased armor by 38%, so almost 2/5. Weak point health now scales per difficulty in proportion to base health, effectively making it harder to break the weak point on hardcore and insanity difficulties in single player and on silver and gold difficulties in multiplayer. The bonus damage from destroying the weak point now also scales with health. Increased normal shot damage by 67%, so now it actually hurts when it shoots you big time, and the normal shot projectile speed has been doubled. Bug fixes: the Destroyer and Hydra's remains will properly disappear after being defeated. That was a problem where they would stick around and still block doorways and whatnot. Matches and missions, match medals, score required to achieve a support medal for bronze, silver, and gold difficulties increased from 400, 800, 1200 to 800, 1600, 2000. We also had experience boosters added to the item store, and there were some increases to the bonuses from equipment. The adaptive war amp increases the damage bonus from 15% to 30%. Engineering kit, same thing. Tech damage increased from 15% to 30% now, and enhanced munitions increased damage bonus from 15% to 30%. So that's really nice. Now these pieces of equipment don't give you a decent nudge where it's a slight increase in how much damage your powers do. Now it's a noticeable increase in how much damage your powers do. It could mean the difference between a single incinerate burning down a mook after its DOT damage is applied, or just leaving it on a sliver of health where you could poke it in the eye and it still dies. And that basically covers everything. Hopefully I explained everything well enough where it made sense. Unfortunately, this video took longer than I expected, but it is what it is. Just wanted to make sure I covered absolutely everything. But in short, most of the Outlaw faction got buffs, but the Berserkers are now a little bit easier to kill. The Ket faction got some major nerfs. Their Ascendant and Destined characters now have way less shield power, so they should be easier to kill and not ridiculously tanky. And a lot of weapons, namely assault rifles and shotguns and even some pistols, got some big buffs. There are also some buffs to some slightly underperforming sniper rifles. And the only real big nerfs were to Annihilation Field, which isn't really a critical deal. It affects more the Krogan Gladiator than it does the Asari Adept, because the Asari Adept is still stupid powerful, because you can run around setting off combo detonations with Lance and Throw inside your Annihilation Field, and those combos are now more powerful than previously. So a melee Asari Adept is a little less viable than a simple run around and combo everything Asari Adept now. And where was it? Remnant are staying the same, and the Fiend and the Ascendant also they also received some nerfs for the Ket faction. But that pretty much covers it. So for those of you who have not really been paying attention as to what patch 1.06 did, I'm sure there's still going to be plenty of people crying that the Vanquisher is now quote unquote useless because it does less damage than previously. But you know, people will be people. In the meantime, this has been Mobius. I hope you found this video informational and very helpful. And as always, thanks very much for watching. I will see you on the battlefield. Good luck, Apex agents.